Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Natalie coming to you live. Spirit and coffee. Got my coffee here. Salute. Cheers. Mm, so lovely. So lovely. Let me get myself a little bit fixed here. Hopefully, you guys can hear me on the. I have a new mic that I set up. I'm pretty excited about trying to get things set up a little bit more official. We'll see how that works out. But make sure you stay hydrated. That's another thing. Especially if you're in New Mexico, you know that the weather is actually getting cold and then it's dry, and it's important to stay hydrated so that we are not cracking our skin and getting all these little things that we do, which I do on my hands. Um, so just want to get started and just talk about, love. Because we have a love bug, unconditional love, and just want to reiterate what that is. So in the context of how do we view love, what is love, and all that stuff, and everybody has their own point of view about what love is, and that's fine. I definitely love to hear your comments or what's going on with you when it comes to this particular subject matter. I think that it's important that everybody has their own way of articulating what it means to them. And then semantics comes in. It's like, what are the words that we're using to describe it? Because it's like God. How do you describe God? You can't, everybody's going to have their own perception of how they interact or engage with God or the universe or creator, whatever you call it, right? And I just say God is easier that way. But love itself has a tonality, vibrational frequency. And I was talking to Curtis. I will continue to mention the conversations we have because we do talk about many different subjects. And this became a topic where people get very passionate about what their experience is with love and does it mean to them and how does it support them, not support. What does it look like? How does it, how do we engage it? And so I know that there are certain world views in that talk about how love is, and love is like these steps. Like, well, love is, first you have your love for yourself, and then you have your love for your family, and then you have your love for your kids, and then they separate it and silo it, and they compartmentalize it, and they put it into these different frameworks and how you approach love from different ways of engagement in individuals. And absolutely, yes, I would say that we all have this different way of engaging people or individuals, right? And the way that we approach them through what we feel is love for these individuals. And it looks different. Like, how do I love my pet? I don't love my pet the way I love my, grandmother, whatever it is, right? But for me, and the concept of love is, might be a little bit different. And I was trying to make this distinction just because I think that it gives a better explanation to why we have such a distortion around this concept. And perhaps if new language was created or a new way to look at it, a new worldview, a new way to engage this particular concept, that perhaps that it would then untangle some of the misconceptions around what love is when we express it to an individual. So I'm just going to speak from what I believe. Now, what you believe doesn't mean that it's right, wrong, good, or bad. It doesn't mean that it's any of those. It just means that your perception of it may be different, and the way that you describe it may be different, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So from my perception is that there is only one type of love, and that is unconditional love. And that unconditional love gets expressed outward into the world. Now, the way that we engage it, if there was a distinction between it, would be love and like. And the like is really the distorted sort of levels that we might put on love, where we say, well, I like this person a little more and I like that person a little more, and maybe I don't really like that one, but not necessarily love. I would say, and I would, if from, at least from my worldview, would say that love itself is just an expression or a vibrational frequency. And we did kind of have this talk, Curtis and I, and there was semantics and we were saying the same thing, only it was coming out in a different way to describe or express it, which I did like the way that it was described by him, made me understand a little bit differently why people say that there are levels of love, and being that the frequency levels might change. Now, if we said that God had a certain tonality, vibrational frequency, and that vibrational frequency was here, right? And it was waving along. But in that vibrational frequency or pattern, let me do this better, that out of that vibrational frequency, if you pulled it down, it sort of changed the frequency, but it still came from the one. It's almost like the spider web. When we think about the spider web, right, is huge, but it can catch prey in different parts of the web, and you wouldn't even know that it was entangled in part of the same whole. Okay, because it's expressed in different parts. So the expression of that particular love may look different, but I don't call that expressions of love in levels of love. I would say an expression of like or not like, which is a distinction to me. And the only reason I put it in a distinction from my worldview is because it's easier to describe, in my opinion, with language, how we experience what other people call levels of love. Because in my worldview, and this is my worldview, and I get that, is that there's only one love. That's it. And that love is unconditional, and that we can love people even if we don't like them. We can pray and have these intentions of really, truly saying the expression of love for everybody, no matter the consequence, no matter what happens, that love actually gets spread out to everybody. Now, the way that we like people or engage with people is going to be different. And I would say that that's a better word rather than saying levels of love, because love is just one level. It's just like God. You say, well, there's levels of God. There's an expression of God. I don't know if there's levels of God. I would say that there's an expression that gets pulled from it. If it was like a string getting pulled down and expressed out, that we could say there's an expression of it. So it really just comes down to words and articulation, and that's it. The same thing is being expressed, right? The same thing. Good morning, Nicole. How are you? Cheers to you. Would say that the same thing is being expressed. And that the expression itself that's coming out, right, is the levels of likeness. How do I engage it? And from the likeness. And the only reason, again, the word love and like is because I feel it's easier to express the distortion rather than using love, because love isn't distorted, it's pure. So why label it a distorted thing when you can just say like? And like, we know, is ego and the distortion of something. Like, I like that person, I don't like that person. Instead of saying love and hate, we can say like and dislike. We didn't have to put hate in there. If we're in unconditional love, then hate doesn't exist. It would be like and dislike. Like, I dislike that, but I still love it. I dislike it, but I still dislike this person, but I still love them. I'm still going to pray for them, right? Rather than saying, well, I love them. And I had a conversation with somebody at one point about, love. And they were communicating this upset about an individual. And they were going on and on and on. And I said, well, this person, it was a baby mama drama stuff. And I told the person, I said, but you still love her, right? Like, you still love her. And the answer was like, no. And I was like, okay, but you can't have this unconditional love for this individual. Like, is it hate? Well, no, it's not hate. Okay, so then you still love and pray. Well, yeah, okay. So it's dislike. I dislike them. I don't agree with them. We don't get along, this and that and the other. But even though we agree to disagree, and even though we don't have the same worldviews and conflict, I can still love them. That doesn't mean I have to like them. Like, the ego doesn't like it for some reason. Now, to the resolve of that, right? The resolve of coming full circle to an individual and liking them, even though they express themselves, that's a whole other conversation. That's a transcendence of ego, which would be totally different. But you can dislike somebody and still love and pray for them and say yes. So it would be easier. And the only reason the distinction between words, because I feel it would be easier for people to understand the practice of unconditional love, even in circumstances that we don't necessarily like individuals. That's it. It's just the ability to express and to feel. Has nothing to do with, oh, well, you're right with your words or you're wrong with the words. It's just how do we use the words to shape our reality? How do we use words to sort of understand how to navigate the reality that we exist in? How do we use words to shape the experience that we're feeling within it? So some people are so attached to what love should feel like or should be that it's this perfect thing, and it is. So anything that's outside of it, we want to say, well, that's not love. Well, maybe it's not, but it could be like or dislike. But I don't know. I guess in my worldview, I don't understand like, oh, I kind of love this person. What do you mean you kind of like love them? You mean you kind of like them? Or this person gets on my damn nerves, but I love them at this level. What level? There's only one level of love from my worldview, okay? There's only one frequency of love. Anything's, good morning, Raul. So can you hear me, Raul? Obviously, you said hello. I have a new mic that I got, and it's hi, Wise Mackie, how are you? And it's how you know it. Yeah, very good. Good morning. Okay, good. So glad to see people on Podbean. I didn't see anybody show up, but good morning to you guys. Good morning to those on Facebook. I only see a couple of people. So love. So understanding that the vibrational frequency, the tonality of love at one frequency pattern. And I like that because it was like, well, when they're talking about maybe levels of love, they're talking about the frequency pulled from that particular frequency down to a different frequency or up to, whatever it is. If we say that love is the highest vibrational frequency, which I'd say God would be maybe above that, right? So that maybe there's like God and then there's like the stream of love. So, but are they one? Maybe they're just one thing. I don't know. That's something that we could talk about later, look into, maybe have conversations with people about that. However, the worldview of love is that the tonality, if we saw the frequency again on one thing and we pulled from it, it would be what other people call levels of love, which is fine. If it works for you, that's the thing. Semantics, right? And words and expressions. So for you, if that works and that helps you to get what it is you're trying to create in life, keep it. It's not about taking it away. It's not about making it right, wrong, good, or bad. It's simply about understanding that words give us an experience. Every word has an attachment to an experience. When we start to remember that our words shape our reality and feelings and expressions of emotions internally, then we can start to shift the words so that we are experiencing what we choose to experience. If we say love, and that experience of love at a different level doesn't feel like it fits, and then you said, well, I'm going to try this worldview of like, and somehow it switches your mind to start thinking about it differently, that shift in consciousness, that shift in the mind will serve you. This is all about what serves you. What's going to serve you to create your birthright, to connect you into God, to connect you into the source so that you're creating the world around you that you want to see. So again, it's the be the change. So if we went back to be the change and we just wanted to understand how that's interconnected to what I'm talking about, being. So if we were like, well, I just want to be love. But then we're like, no, let's put levels on it. We got to put levels on it because I can't just be unconditional love without having some sort of level about how I approach this person in love and that person in love and this person in love. And then it becomes so hard that you're like, screw it. I'm not going to do this anymore. It's too much. I have to remember all these things. But if we said, okay, I'm going to practice unconditional love, and then I'm going to look at the levels of likeness. Well, I kind of like that person, but can I still love them? Yeah, I can. Do I dislike this person but still love them? Yeah, I can do that. Because I understand that the likeness of an individual or the likeness of something is just the ego's judgment upon that thing. Now I feel we have something to work with, at least from my worldview, because the expression and the way that it's going to serve me in the practice of unconditional love is to remind me that these likes that I have are just ego. And I can bring myself right back to unconditional love over and over and over. And the practice of it gets faster and faster and faster to the point where there's non-attachment. And that's the point. Unconditional love is a form of an egoic id. Loving. Love is just love. Yeah. So there you go. Go ahead and you can write more, Wise Mackie, so that I can try to articulate what it is that you're saying. Yes, and the construct of love itself could be an egoic survival mechanism because it's not God, not just God. It's part of God. But God is love, not love is God. It's not the opposite way. So I think that's what you're saying, Wise Mackie. I'm not 100% sure. But if it was switched, then we would say that love's unconditional form wouldn't be egoic. I think that's what you're saying. And that love itself, the form of unconditional love, is an expression of ego in this dimension, and that's possible. But it's a form that helps us get back to our God self. Perhaps that's what you're saying. I'm not 100% sure if that's what you're saying. However, that is what I believe. So the belief of God is all. And there are no words for God. It just is, right? And so that piece, you can't really decipher between ego and not, because it's everything and it's not ego. So having unconditional love as an egoic form or an id, yes, I can see that idea. Loving, yeah. Unconditional love is limited, yeah. So when we say unconditional love, when we are limiting it, I see what you're saying, like on the opposite side of it, because then there would be a condition if it's unconditional. I think that's what you mean now, the duality. To let love just run its course and be, then that's when you're really just free to be what it is meant to be. Yeah, it's just the beingness, the essence of it. Absolutely. And then putting words on it, right? When you say unconditional love, that perhaps the opposite end is condition. That's a possibility. So yeah, I understand. I believe that's what you're saying, and I understand it to be. And yes, it is a beingness. And that's another thing I'm just going to listen to you. No, exactly. I'd love for you to get involved. I love what you have to say. So your expression of it is super important. I do listen. The beingness is we are. Yes. Is as we are. I love it. Thank you. Yes, Wise Mackie. Which is funny because the beingness is another big piece of this, right? It's just being. But the articulation of it is critical as well, because we use words to express what we want to experience. But once we get to a place where we have created this sort of environment that we want to see, we can just be and allow things to unfold, or we could just be. So the beingness is another kind of, it's cool that you brought that up. That's why I'd like you to talk. Our type, Wise Mackie, perhaps we'll have you on the show when we get up and operational one day, is when we think about the beingness, right? So it's been popping up, the beingness and unconditional love, and all these things have been popping up, which is why I'm talking about it, obviously, because that's obviously, I feel like that's what God's saying, focus on, girlfriend. Okay, cool. Beingness is a huge one. So with Curtis, we were talking about it. And so apparently what happened, and I didn't even know this happened, right? But you know me, I'm authentic. I'm going to tell my truth. And God knows I'm not perfect, especially in this place. Forget it. I have failed epically in this world. But I guess at one point, Curtis was on my show as a guest. And I was talking about the doing, like the action behind what we do, right? And I was talking about it from a form of like, we have to be in action to create. We can't just sit and be and expect everything to just unfold. No, we have to put some work into it, at least in this dimension. If we're going to create something here, we have to be in the doing. We have to be in the doing in order to get something done. But apparently he came on the show and I was telling him that I do, and he was kind of telling me, well, then just be or something. Anyway, I think I insulted him. He didn't even realize it 3 years ago. And he said he stopped listening to me because of it. And then I was like, really? But I didn't know he stopped listening to me. I didn't know he was upset with me. I'm glad he told me later because I love to know when people are upset with me. It helps me to grow as a person. If I don't know what I'm doing, then I'll never know, right? But it came out 3 years later, like, yeah, I just stopped listening to you. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. You can stop listening to me. It's okay. I'm not perfect. But the beingness was the big piece. And I threw it right back at him just the other day. And it was like, be, right? Like, just be. So, like, well, I'm experiencing this and I don't know what to do. And I looked at him and I was like, there's nothing to do. Just be. Just be. And allow it to unfold. And allow yourself to go through the process of that feeling and that emotion, right? Allow yourself to feel the physical sensations of what it brings to you and what's available on the other side of that feeling and that emotion. Because what's on the other side is usually momentum, inspiration, and motivation to move to the next stage. That's usually what happens. So typically our sadness, our anger, frustrations, our depressions, or most people don't allow themselves to fully move through that and be okay with it, sit into it and be with it and be like, oh yeah, this is an emotion I get, because on the other side of that emotion is another emotion that's going to trigger. And that's usually the opposite, which is the positive, quote unquote positive, let's say, emotion that gives us the energy and fuels us to move forward in inspiration or motivation. So just be, right? So that's kind of been the been the topic of just be. And so I'm reiterating that, where I was like, well, you programmed me that way probably to remind you to be and remind myself to be. So be love. And I'm glad you brought that up, Boys Becky. That's why I'm like, just keep talking, because yesterday there was a lot of energy going on in my household where there's a lot of changes happening in my household from all kinds of people are changing. Everybody's changing at a fast pace. Everybody's going fast. Like this stuff is starting to untangle really quickly. And so once that starts to happen, I'm asking myself, how can I be of value? How do I support the individual? How do I look at this from a different perspective? How can I be love? And yesterday, that was the thing, be love. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about the levels of likeness or what love is. Just be it and just engage through that essence of love and what it feels like. And the beauty and the miracle that we see when we are just being love, and I shouldn't say just being love, but when we are being love and allowing ourselves to view the world through the scope of love, through the lens of love, we start to again see miracles and see love within each individual. And they can feel the radiation of that energy. They can feel the love. And it opens up their heart. And the heart, when it's open and you allow yourself just to be in the essence of it, just be the essence of whatever it is you're embodying, that radiates outwards, and that does create the space and environment you're looking for. It takes time to get there though. It doesn't, some people are like, well, just be, and they're like, well, okay, great. Thank you. So how do I just be? What do I do? Nothing, just be. Which I'm learning to be, and not always in the doing. Uncomfortable for me, for sure. It really is. And I'm practicing it. It's a practice for me. Some people can just be and it's easy. It's not easy for me. I'm constantly do. And I'm like, Natalie, just be, just be, just be, just be. I talk about it all the time, but doesn't mean I'm being the doing. That's what I be, the doing. I be the doing. But me being the doing is not always healthy. So I could just be the love and be the peace and be the joy and be the whatever it is that I choose to be. Okay. Be in a mutual space. I love that. Mine's back. Let me read what you said over here. Hold on. Not categorizing anything or anyone. It's a good time to be fluid with change of the people around you. Yeah, it is. When you're just being, there is doing or a role to play, a good time to implement wisdom. Yeah. And that's good. And it's also it's pretty cool because when you're just being, your scope opens up, your perception opens up. You start to see bigger, broader, basically. When we are in the doing, we're focused and narrow. But when we're in the being, we're opening up the space to see broadly. So we can use both. Now, here's the thing with the doing is that I, action-oriented person, know that it's important to be in the being to see the full scope of work and then narrow in on the doing, which is the essence of creating what the beingness has brought forth. So that's really the doing. You're bringing forth the essence of the being into creation, into this world, into manifestation in the physical plane. So if you choose to keep creating, that's how you do it. You open up your space, allow yourself to be, allow the scope to open up. And then when you're like, okay, get it. Now let me be in the doing and focus on what it is that I want to create after I've gotten insight from that scope. But you can't have, if you have too much of the beingness and not the doingness, then you end up in this black hole. There has to be some action. And when there's action to drive it forward, then you allow yourself that space to be in creation with God. It becomes the co-creation. You become the craftsman. So we're working on our craft, and that's beautiful. As long as it's in the name of God and we're doing it, it's a beautiful thing. We're allowing ourselves to be what a craftsman. And we see this all the time. The monks working on, I need to get that parable so I can say it right. But I know that he goes in to understand how to shape diamonds perfectly. And that becomes his craft. And he works every single day at his craft to perfect it. Well, that's the same thing. If you're working on God's miracle and you're working on your craft, that every day you're getting better at the craft. You're just working a little bit at a time on that craft so that the masterpiece unfolds. But there is a doingness. So there's a beingness, open scope. Then the doingness is a little bit of like, how do I bring God's work into this creation? It's called co-creation with God, and bring it forth into fruition. Let's see. I invite higher self into the present moment. Let's see. Yes. To invite the higher self into the present moment, the scope or platform is already open. Just flow. It will balance itself out. Yeah. We are the alchemy and the alchemist at the same time. I love that. Yes. The doingness is actuality of ourselves. Yeah. I love that. The alchemy, we are the alchemy and the alchemist at the same time. I'm going to use your quote. I'm just going to copy that, Wise Mackie, and I will make sure that I put you as the person. I love that. Yes, we are alchemy and the alchemist at the same time. Very good. That's just everything I've said into one sentence. You could be my one sentence person. You want to help me with some marketing stuff, Wise Mackie? Be like taglines, right? Like the taglines for Spirit and Coffee. Yes, the doingness is the actuality of ourselves. Yes, the actuality of ourselves. I like that as well. So those are good ways to describe and express what I'm saying. Yes. The doingness is the actuality of ourselves. And it is, like you said, the alchemist and alchemy at the same time. So we're creating, it's the ebb and the flow. And then we jump into creation, and we recognize when we're like in this place that's stuck, right? Because I get there too. And Chris and I were talking about the stuckness, right? We get stuck and we're like, oh, what do we do now? It's like, I don't know, just be for a while. Let's see. And then pray and let's see what. And sometimes we have to jolt ourselves into action, into things we don't want to do. So, like, that helps to get it kind of flowing. And then you're like, now I know what I'm supposed to be, whatever. If I get stuck, I'll just start reading, because that's a doingness. I'll say, okay, I'm going to read. Then I read, I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, okay. And then it triggers. And then I'm like this and that and that. And then before you know, it's like a whole curriculum's created. And I'm like, oh, there you go. See, the whole curriculum's really. Now I'm like, okay, next. Then I get bored and I'm like, what's next? And I'll look at more stuff and then I'll create more curriculum. And I imagine that me being in my graduate program, which is going to be a Master's of Consciousness in Transformative Studies, which I'm excited to go into, individuals who speak my language finally, that are they're skilled in a way in academia, which is, I personally didn't come from academia. It might sound like I did, but I didn't. It was hard. I did get my degree from a 4-year institution, but I was a non-traditional student. And that's like my story, right? That's beyond Spirit and Coffee. That's the Natalie story. But I did come from like wisdom more than I came from academia. Now I'm just learning how to put the words to the experience without causing conflict. Because in language, there's 2 ways to look at language and this is a simple way. I'm giving you 2 simple ways to look at language, not the only way to look at language, but you can be a creditor or a debtor. And if you're a debtor, your language is always in conflict. You don't even know it. It's just the words that you use cause conflict with individuals. And I've learned, right, how to change the language so that it's not in conflict, but it's a win-win situation with every individual. Now, does it always come out that way? No. But it is semantics, and it is fixing the way that you engage through language, because some language will cause conflict. And creditors, which Jesus Christ was pegged the best creditor, or the most renowned creditor ever known to mankind. Good morning, bestie. Bestie Westie. Woo, woo, woo. You showed up. Boop, boop, be doop. The creditor, Jesus Christ, and he says, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That's what I love. That's like my favorite quote, right? And give to God what is God's. And that's creditor right there. It's like, it's a win-win situation. God gets what God gets. Caesar gets what he gets. Give it back. I had a friend who said, well, what does Caesar own? Well, absolutely nothing. That's the point. So Caesar thinks he owns it. Give it to him. You don't own it either. Give it away. But understanding that win-win situation that can be created, and that comes from like negotiations, all that kind of stuff. So understanding language does create and shape the way that our world starts to, manifest. And I will say that understanding language, especially around this particular subject matter, is going to help me with the wisdom. So if I marry the wisdom of my hardships, that I was raised on the streets and blah, 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 whatever, and then put it in with a verbiage that creates a win-win situation dynamic, that then people can engage with this language and start to co-create with God in harmony. I'm not saying that there's not going to be meltdowns, because that happens. That's part of life. But at least you're able to resolve and come to some consensus or a negotiation, or a win-win situation. So language is an important way to get your point across without actually causing conflict, which I used to do. I used to get in a lot of fights before. So I just didn't have the right words to articulate the experience, and then everybody get pissed off. Now I'm able to articulate it and let people know that they can articulate their experience. And what I'm hearing is this. So a little bit there. Okay, let's see. It is creation. We're just dissecting it into smaller pieces to comprehend what's happening. Yes, exactly. Congratulations. Thank you. Esoteric knowledge is innate, a beautiful gift to recognize in this realm. Amen. I agree. It is beautiful. We all have these beautiful gifts to add. So I'm always like, what are your gifts? What do you want to contribute? I'm not going to force upon anybody what they should or should not be doing. It's whatever flows with you. And then you find that thing. And then once you find that thing, you're so committed to it that you can't go without it. You're like, I know that God is saying that this is what I get to do. And you just do it. And it just becomes a part of you through, God, just like this, Spirit and Coffee. This is my call. And so I do it every day, Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday. And sometimes I take time off, but mostly I don't. So there you go. You hear a lot of Natalie talking. All right. So there you have it. I absolutely love you guys. Have the best day ever. It's Monday. Have a marvelous Monday. And of course, I will be seeing you guys tomorrow. Maybe there'll be guests, maybe there won't. Just depends on the day. I'm okay with either. But I just want to say that I love you guys. Namaste. Have a great day. Things are shifting. We're working really hard to get other things out to you guys. Okay. So love you. Bye-bye.